Episode 249 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Restart and Reflect edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, recovering from Juan Soto going to the Mets, but that's fine. The Yankees started their rebuild with Max Fried. So we'll see what else both teams have in store. Of course, you know, the LA Dodgers they already added one reliever, and they're probably going to add another Japanese superstar. It almost sounds like an ECW show, but yeah, we got that. The Niners actually won a football game. Lewis Hamilton came from 16th to finish 4th, while his future teammate finished just ahead of him after starting 19th. We'll talk about the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix amongst other things, but of course, I couldn't do the show without my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, a computer genius, a gentleman and a scholar. His name is Joshua Fine. What's going on, brother?
Doing great, Phil. Of course, glad to be back for another week. And of course, you mentioned the 49ers winning. Well, the Jaguars finally won a game this season for the third time. So that at least was good there. Good scoring there, of course. And we had an entertaining weekend of college football. Maybe we'll talk about that later too. But yeah, glad to be back on. Last race, the Formula One season, just had it. And now we have off season.
Yeah, we're going to get into the off season here, and as the weeks go on in between our time off, we will recap all the major motorsport series, NASCAR with the Cup Series, and of course Xfinity and trucks probably together, or maybe we'll do Xfinity by itself because there was a lot that went on. And then we'll also look at IndyCar, Formula One, and other series that come up accordingly before we get to the Rolex 24 at Daytona here at the end of January. Also, that'll be the championship weekend. So my birthday actually lands. It used to be a time where the Super Bowl could land. Now, championship weekend for the NFL is actually on my birthday, so that'll be cool. We will get into the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, who wins the Constructors Championship between McLaren and Ferrari. The end of an era for Lewis and Mercedes. I said McLaren. He used to drive for McLaren. Now he used to drive for Mercedes as of a couple of days ago, and now he will be a Ferrari driver as of January 1. But the guy that he's replacing, Carlos Sainz, has already jumped into his new team at Williams and is testing for them. So we'll get into the young driver test and some of the other items that came from there. We'll update you on the news of the week from NASCAR, IndyCar. Formula One is also Formula One, NHRA, and other things, other series. We'll give an update on a rare weekend where both of our teams actually won. In terms of fantasy, got the first round bye and actually got a little bit of money back in the process. In my league, got screwed in 2 leagues in terms of what happened this weekend, but I think it really had more to do with the whole season, regular season in general. Got a bye in the sleeper league as well, so 2 1 seeds should have been at least 1 2 seed, and got screwed. But then that was the league where I didn't even get to draft, so I'm probably just going to drop all my players and just tank it anyways. That's what I should do, because it's not like I'm going to win. I'm in the losers bracket anyways. So if I want to win the toilet bowl, I might as well go all out. Uh, the the Niners are another team that's trying to win a toilet bowl. They're down to like their 15th running back. I think they're going to be calling at the rate they're going. They might actually call OJ because that motherfucker's not busy. He goes on social media, and we're
Wait,
these
you mean OJ died, right?
what
OJ,
OJ's
you're talking about OJ Simpson, or
yeah.
yeah, he died earlier in the year.
Oh fuck. Oh well. I wanted to have a dead guy run for a dead guy who murdered two people run for the 49ers because hell, most people seem to die when they do run for the 49ers. So, oh well, whatever. That was juicy on my part, haha. But it was definitely shows that I'm out of it. That's what happens when you have your mind on being an assistant director. So I'll blame it on that. Whatever. Well, there's probably somebody that's undead that could probably run for the 49ers. That isn't that can add to Patrick Taylor, and Isaac Garendo because he injured his foot or something during the game on Sunday. We'll talk about all that. We'll get into F2 and F1 Academy last week in Abu Dhabi. Formula E had their season opener in Sao Paulo, and the Snowball Derby, which saw a Truck Series regular get a massive victory for himself, his family, and his career over one of the big time guys in super late model racing who has tried to win that race for many years. So, getting into all that, Josh will let us know all things going on in iRacing and gaming in the sim segment, and then we'll call it a day. So after I went and tried to put a dead guy into the 49ers, how do you go and transition into that? By somebody who went and murdered the field on Sunday in Abu Dhabi in I don't know if I I should be really referencing that after that asshole that went and shot the dipshit that shot the United Healthcare guy, and the fact that he figured out a way to get caught at McDonald's, no less. That's it's like if you're gonna get caught, I mean, Jesus, like you're gonna do McDonald's. I mean, why don't you really lean into it and just like either like Dunkin' Donuts, Waffle House, I don't know, like some. It's like like a 7-Eleven. Like if you really want to go for it, why don't you just go full force? Like go for like a Quickie Mart type place and get caught there. Quickie Mart reference, considering that was one of the most entertaining, shitty Monday Night Football games I've ever seen in my life, just because of the Simpsons broadcast. Please let them have a cartoon broadcast as much as possible. It's what got me through that Super Bowl in February. So I'm all for that. Bart throwing an interception to his dad's head, which was great. That was classic. That seems just like Cooper Rush too. So, but I'm going all over the place here. Lando Norris won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix on Sunday, and it was not really much of a discussion. It was something where he knew he needed to go out and win. He hadn't won a race since Singapore in September. And so it had been a shoddy time. And that was his fourth win of the year, but he probably left multiple opportunities out there. But he left nothing on the table on Sunday. McLaren needed a result to get the Constructors' Championship. We'll mention why it wasn't as easy, but in the end, Lando Norris went out after starting on pole with his teammate on the outside pole and ran off and won the race. The Ferraris of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc finished second and third. Lewis Hamilton in his last race for Mercedes finished fourth, passing his now ex-teammate George Russell on the outside of turn 9 in a great pass there. Fish lips after getting penalized for running over Oscar Piastri came back to 6th. Pierre Gasly continued the Alpine resurgence to finish 7th. Nico Hülkenberg in his last race for Haas finished 8th. Fernando Alonso 9th, and then Oscar Piastri, the last car on the lead lap. Alex Albon missing out on a point there, finished a lap down. Yuki Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, Stroll, Jack Doohan in his race debut for Alpine before he starts next year, and Kevin Magnussen, who had the fastest lap, but of course was out of the points, so it didn't matter. In his last F1 race, since he'll be driving for BMW WRT Racing next year in the World Endurance Championship. Liam Lawson, Valtteri Bottas, who hit everything but the lottery. Franco Colapinto, who had issues early in the race. And then Sergio Perez, who got spun off in the first lap and then couldn't get the car going again, were the 4 retirements. Lawson retired late in the race there. So, in the end, McLaren needed the result. Lando Norris got that result and had one of his better drives of the season. The Ferrari team did everything, or tried to do everything they could. They probably waited too long in terms of possibly trying to get Carlos Sainz in a pit road to maybe try and put him on soft tires, or try to get Leclerc to do something else. But in the grand scheme of things, it was a relatively interesting, intriguing battle. People now, a lot of people wonder if Leclerc didn't have to get the grid penalty for the power unit component issue that they had, taking a 10 grid spot penalty. What would the race have been like? Because he had a lot of pace. Also, for Lewis Hamilton, had pace during practice to a point. Then in qualifying, as it seemed like it happened all year, conveniently his car became undrivable. And then in the race, it goes back to being normal, and Lewis shows why he's better than George Russell. There are a lot of things to take away, but McLaren getting their first Constructors' Championship since 1998 is pretty crazy to think. That was Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard. McLaren, that was Adrian Newey was at McLaren at that time. There's a lot going on. Mercedes, it was a West McLaren Mercedes team. That was before Michael Schumacher had won a world championship for Ferrari. So that it's crazy to think how long it was. They're saying like Lando Norris wasn't even born the last time McLaren won a Constructors' Championship, so it tells you how long it's been. But you could tell how excited Zach Brown was. There was a lot of relief. Even though McLaren's race was somewhat compromised because of fish lips on the first lap, Lando responded and did the job, and they were able to get that Constructors' Championship on Sunday, Josh.
Yeah, first constructors championship for Red Bull since 1998, or I don't know why I just say Red Bull, but since for McLaren since 1998 there, which yeah, I think that's obviously it's pretty significant for McLaren, which we've seen this throughout the year from them since the midpoint on of this season, but the turnaround that they've had in the last 4 or 5 years from where they were when Alonso was driving for them. I think they've done an incredible job of building the program back up from where it was at that point, and the job that Zach Brown has done. I think you have to really give a lot of credit to him for being able to have a team that's competitive now challenging for race victories and regularly getting podiums, and you have 2 drivers who are really good there and able to potentially next year legitimately challenge for the championship. Maybe this year not as much if they had done a little bit better with their strategy, but they've improved a lot over the years, and now you're finally seeing all that hard work manifest into the constructors title that they've won this year. So yeah, pretty significant on that end. But they did have a 21 point gap or lead on Ferrari there, which for them huge advantage. And really, I think it would have taken a disaster for Ferrari to try and win the constructors title from McLaren, but Lando did what he had to do finally, and we saw Lando actually rise to the occasion, which we've seen in past races where he had a good start or a good starting spot and had an opportunity to take advantage. But here, he finally was able to legitimately do that and dominated this race from start to finish. And there was really no opportunity for Ferrari to go out and win, even though there were a few times where after pit stop or in the middle of the strategy, they with Sainz was able to close in on Lando, but nonetheless, Lando able to actually go out and dominate the entire race, which we haven't really said that too much about him this year. So able to do that. You brought up the grid penalty for Leclerc and the amount of pace that he had. I mean, it is what it is there. I could have, I guess they could have, not taken that grid penalty somehow, but could have affected, especially with Piastri spinning out on the first lap. Could it have helped them? Perhaps, but I feel like regardless of that, Lando just had enough pace throughout where he wasn't really going to have any challenge for his lead there. So, as Piastri spun out the first lap with Max Verstappen making contact, which definitely made for an interesting start there. But at the same time, I think with Piastri, he was able to make up some of the points there at the end and help McLaren build that advantage, and definitely didn't need it, but still able to recover there. So wild Grand Prix. And then you mentioned with Lewis having pace at the end and able to overtake George Russell there. So yeah, that's a good way to finish for him. Wasn't able to get on the podium, but still the first out of his teammate, and they finished as high as he could in the points without finishing on the podium. So good ending for Lewis, of course, and what an end to that partnership. That was probably one of the most dominant pairing of all time in Formula One. So looking forward to seeing what Lewis brings to the table with Ferrari and what they're able to do there. But yeah, this is going to be interesting next year with the title and the Constructors' Championship, and I think McLaren should be a challenger as they are, as they become, and definitely think Ferrari will be right there with them.
And I mean, after 13 years, what they built, what was considered a bad move when he made it. People question whether he had basically thrown away his career. Um, if the late great Nicky Lauda was a main part of why Lewis went there, and he said it in his interview with Graham Bensinger. He had never really met Lewis, and then I think it was one of the last Grand Prix of the year in later in this 2012 season. I think in Singapore, and he was able to arrange a meeting with Lewis, and they sat and talked for hours, and basically Nicky Lauda was able to convince Lewis of what his career and what he would end up being seen as if he had came to Mercedes and won. And Nicky Lauda knew something we all didn't know and basically called a shot, and Lewis went and delivered on 6 world championships, should have been 7, and or 8 really, but I don't know how many, like 70 something wins, and then say 50 something poles and 100, like 3 digits and 100 something podiums. I mean, he became one of the greatest of all time, and the emotions for him at the end of that race, the emotions between himself and Bono and Bono's wife, the relationship that they had built together. They were like brothers there, and Bono will always be known for Hammer Time, and but also for just being the steady hand for all those years to keep Lewis in the right state of mind, no matter the situation, whether they were the best car, which for many years they were, and Lewis was the best driver in the best car, or the last 3 years when the car was trash, and Lewis wasn't given what he needed to compete when the energies were being pushed towards Woody. Um, in the end, I mean, for what the last 3 years have been, minus the British Grand Prix here in the summer, it doesn't, it shouldn't take away at the end of all the wins and championships and what a team that wasn't a championship level team. He took that effort and put them over the top, and that really speaks to his ability, and it speaks to the talent of Lewis Hamilton. And fundamentally, like Josh said, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic now that he moves to Ferrari with the chosen guy and Charles Leclerc. Ferrari has been able to provide 2 good cars, but of course, there's always a but with Ferrari, whether it's bad decisions in terms of race decisions, in terms of pit calls or strategy or whatever, like issues with the car at times, etc., etc. Will that partnership net the desired result, which is a world championship, a first drivers world championship for Ferrari since 2007? Constructors, I'm trying to remember the last time they won, but the reality of the world is Ferrari fought there in the second half of the season, and even with a lame duck in Carlos Sainz, he drove hard till the end. Charles Leclerc had probably his best season of his career, and finished third in points. Even though he's finished second in points before, I think this is a better year with the wins and just how he performed. So I think the momentum for Ferrari is very high, and a lot of positive energy moving forward. McLaren, of course, winning the Constructors' Championship is huge for them. They're still a customer team, but they're a lead customer. You know, like the McLaren-Mercedes partnership is going to continue into the new formula. They had the best car for a good amount of the second half of the season. Frankly, it goes back to Miami in May. At that point, I think that was a turning point where, you know, it looked like McLaren was starting to take over, but Red Bull had the advantage from the year before, and was able to maintain that early in the season, which is largely why Fish Lips won the championship. He won all those races, gained the points, and then when he didn't have the best of it and he wasn't running over other people, he was getting good points finishes. And that was why he was able to get that title. But it won't be so easy next year, which is a positive for everybody. Unless you're a fan of him, which I don't know how you're listening to this show then. But yeah, I mean that's the McLaren and Ferrari battle. Throwing back to the old days is great. Knowing Lewis is moving over to Ferrari, another legendary figure going there. I mean, they tried it with Fernando Alonso, and it didn't come off the way they wanted it to, meaning they didn't get that driver's championship. And I don't remember constructors. I don't think they won them. I think Red Bull won all those constructors titles at that time. And then you had Sebastian Vettel, and that went away. So now Ken Lewis in his 40s be able to do something kind of like doing what Nigel Mansell did in his 40s and become a world champion again, and you know, push Father Time, so to speak. Can that happen? We will see. Final points in terms of the drivers' standings. Verstappen had 437. That's 63 point victory there. So yeah, he won by over Lando Norris, and then Lando Norris was 18 points out of Charles Leclerc for second. Piastri ended up 2 points ahead of Carlos Sainz for fourth. Russell ended up 22 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton. They finished 6th and 7th. Checo Perez in what likely is his last Formula One race, at least for a year, finished in 8th. Alonso 9th. Pierre Gasly held off Nico Hulkenberg for 10th by a point. And so on and so forth. Valtteri Bottas, who has a grid penalty if he ever drives Formula One again. One of 3 drivers who didn't score a point. He's the only driver that ran the whole season and didn't score a point. Logan Sargent, of course, fired earlier this year by Williams, and then both Franco Colapinto and Alex Albon started crashing cars themselves. So Jack Doohan, who only had one race in Abu Dhabi, so it's not a fair deal there, but finishes at the bottom of the table. In terms of the Constructors' Championship, we know that Sauber finished last and Williams finished next to last. McLaren ended up winning the Constructors' Championship by 14 points. Red Bull was third, Mercedes fourth. Big separations. Red Bull was 63 points behind Ferrari. So interesting how that worked for fish lips and him finishing ahead of Lando. And then that was essentially a similar gap for their gap to Ferrari when it was basically fish lips who scored the majority of the points. Mercedes over 100 points behind them. And then Aston Martin, who was like, what is it? 400, 300 something points behind, which tells you like the cliff after the first four teams. Alpine, with their late season run, got themselves from 8th to 6th. And so credit to them at the end of the season to go and make that happen. Of course, there'll be a Mercedes customer in 2026 taking over Aston Martin's spot, which they'll become the Honda team. Both Red Bull teams will have their Red Bull powertrains badged by Ford there in a couple of years. Haas in 7th. What is racing? What was, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, V-Carb, Red Fool, Race, Red Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, whatever the hell, they finished 8th. So, in terms of the testing, Charles Leclerc ended up being the fastest in Abu Dhabi for the so they don't show at the pace. Yeah, I mean, you also had the debut Carlos Sainz in the Williams. You had Yuki Tsunoda drive a Red Bull proper car. So there's a lot of other drivers there. I mean, you had Pato O'Ward drive in a McLaren, actually finished 7th fastest. Carlos Sainz was only was a 1200th off of Charles Leclerc's fastest time in the Williams. Russell 3rd. Nico Hülkenberg in his debut with Sauber, or in a return to Sauber, because I think he drove for them before. 4th. Andrea Kimi Antonelli for Mercedes was 5th. Ayumu Iwasa for Racing Bulls, whatever that is, will be 6th. Doohan and Paul Aaron, 8th and 9th for Alpine. Esteban Ocon in his debut for Haas was 10th. His teammate, at least for the test, Rio Hirakawa, was 12th. Luke Browning, the young driver for Williams, was 11th. Liam Lawson, 13th, who's in play possibly for the Red Bull seat. Arthur Leclerc testing with his brother. First time that's happened. Brothers testing in Ferraris. There, Isaac Hadjar for Red Bull, Lando, Tsunoda in the Red Bull, as I mentioned. Gabriel Bortoleto, who's going to be driving for Sauber next year. Piastri, Jack Crawford, the American driver for Aston Martin, along with former F2 champion Felipe Drogovic. Frederick Vesti for Mercedes, and then Antonio Fuoco, the World Endurance Championship driver for Ferrari. rounding out the field there. Ferrari announced powering the Cadillac Andretti Formula Racing, TWG Global, or Andretti Global, whatever, I guess, GM will run the team under Cadillac brand, probably Andretti. Announced intended to manufacture his own power unit to race with, but the Ferrari, with the Andretti Formula Racing, led by TWG Global and General Motors. Last former Graham Loudon team principal. Okay, so when it's the German so they'll become the second Ferrari customer, along with Haas in 2026 for 2 years before they make their own power unit and gearbox. So we have that. We have thoughts on who might be the driver, the teammate, and making a McLaren reveals brave risk approach to car design, which, when you consider how fast they were, I don't know if they really want to mess with the car. Hamilton would have fought for win without Bollard incident. No shit. That would have, if they would have given him a proper car in qualifying the whole entire season, who knows how many wins they could have had. I'm not saying that the Mercedes was an amazing piece of machinery, but they screwed themselves in qualifying for I don't know how many of these races. So Mercedes has only themselves to blame on that one. Takes blame for, but unhappy with 10-second penalty. It's like, yeah, you ran over somebody, fish lips. You actually have to pay a penalty for running over someone. Unless you live in alternative land, which I guess he wanted to be treated the same way as I guess Kelly Clarkson and Gwen decided to go and match their outfits or something. It looked ridiculous. Kelsey Ballerini. Oh. John Legend, yeah. And, oh wow, Adam Levine is back. Interesting. Wow, okay. Guess he's bored. Or he's trying to remake himself. What was I? Yeah, so that's you're done with Formula One. We'll move forward into the racing news for other series. In NASCAR, another filing in the antitrust lawsuit by NASCAR, basically reasserting their thoughts and feelings about the irreparable harm. And I think the newest piece, of course, is they'll not approving or not allowing the charters to be transferred. Or the NASCAR and Yates and the teams did this themselves. I was talking about like Tyler Reddick leaving. Okay. Also, they have the independent arbiter on whether 2311 Front Row can acquire the two SHR charters on having a legal release clause. So, you have teams that are banking on charters and whatever, and trying to figure out where charters are going for 2025. And so that kind of is still in flux. In terms of other news, Chandler Smith, it sounds like, is going to have an Xfinity ride. Where is to be determined. It isn't going to be JRM, and it isn't going to be at Haas factory team or Gibbs. So I really don't know where that is in a full-time capacity unless he's going to race for Colleague again. I'm trying to think of what other team there would be offhand for Chandler Smith to race for. And yeah, that's it really is interesting to me, that one. King's Hawaiian leaving, the Brad Keselowski and RFK, so I figure whether it's the old JTG Doherty team or maybe some of these other efforts that are looking for some money, there might be options. We mentioned Clyde and his paint scheme. There's also, we'll go into that. So yeah, Nick DeGroot has a good article up on motorsport.com with the updates. And SVG in the 88, Paris and Kroger, RFK, Herbst join. So Riley Herbst will be joining the E3. Is expanding next year. We'll get to Colleague going and changing things up. AJ Allmendinger back in Cup. And confusion is on the and he didn't want to leave the Cup Series after he had done what he had done a couple of years ago, and and then you have Ty Dillon out there to just fill the field. Ty Norris is over there, so that'll be a big move to go and get somebody who has the knowledge, old school knowledge there. That's kind of interesting thinking about Ty Norris because Dale Jr. now has the stylized 8 back, and he's going to put it on Sammy Smith's Xfinity car. So more pressure on Sammy Smith to actually have to perform after a mediocre year last year and a lucky win at Talladega. He's going to have to perform because everyone's going to be looking at that 8 car. I mean, you also add the notion that you have the defending series champion in one of the cars, and then you have 2 of the best young talents probably in NASCAR as 2 of your teammates in Connor Zilic and Carson Kvapil. Granted, both of them are raw, but in terms of potential, of course, Carson Kvapil on short tracks is going to be really tough. And then Connor Zilic on road courses, forget about it. So it's going to be tough for Sammy Smith, and he's going to have more eyes on him for sure now that that 8 is on there. What is it? Chad Haney will be the crew chief for Hank Hill. Danny Stockman will return to Jesse Love's 2 car. Andy Street, who's been the crew chief for Hank Hill, is going to be running, be a part of a 3rd Cup effort for limited races for RCR, which it seems like is going to run the number 31. And then also they're going to run a 3rd Xfinity car. So maybe that's where Chandler Smith is going and taking his money. But to be determined. Ryan Ellis running number 71. That's with there's some sort of family lineage there. Jeb Burton somehow or another continues to have a job. And then Blaine Perkins, who's daddy's money. They'll be driving for Jordan Anderson Racing next year in the Xfinity Series. Trying to see if there's anything else. Yeah, no. Nothing that I see at Briscoe, MTG, you got that, Spire, and like down, whatever, Hayek, and Hamlin loses Gabe Hart, but then he gets Chris Gale, Luke Tyler, Bubba Wallace, which I don't know why they made that change. Yeah, it just makes no sense. Ronnie Childers going over Justin Haley. FRM's third car. Yeah, Zane Smith. I think. Yeah, there is an under contract. Yeah, so he's going back to FRM. It's like they only run full time at the end of 20 switch plays. Justin Haley. Not confirmed. It's also possible. Could be selected for opt to run various drivers. Yeah, I mean, if it seems like they're going to run who they it would make sense that Rick Ware would go and run Corey LaJoy, but it seems that Pig and Joy is not room for organization. So, reveal plan. Who he'll drive for, Trackhouse Project 91 didn't appear. Says he'll come back. Richard chose 33. I guess so. I think they might make it 31. Jimmy Johnson returned 84. Some other part-time teams. So, yeah. So, we don't know how many permanent charters are going to be next year. There's some changes in terms of owners and whatever. But, obviously, the biggest part is, Stuart Haas and those charters where the 3 charters moving over. It looks like, front row, 2311 if allowed, and then I guess the other one. Do we know who got the other one? Is it RFK or did RFK? They got that from where? Rick Ware Racing. So is the third charter the one that went to Trackhouse? Or
maybe
it's like I don't know where. We've never gotten a clear picture on where all the other charter went, but I guess we'll find out sooner rather than later. In IndyCar news, it sounds like we've gotten an initial look at the 2027 car, proposed 27 design. Meeting and replacement illustrations saying urging for a complete. I noticed that they attach a photo of a Red Bull X1 open wheel concept as an example for the share decline, but did say it could owners is a lightly modified version of today's car, large bellowing F2 style wing. Those who offer exciting news for IndyCar to follow. Which means that the top that carries the fixed design. Yeah, if they made something like that car, it would be really cool. And then Dito on the clean sheet design. Yeah, and that the F2 car wing, yeah, it was just god awful. Time further content is yeah, so there was a lot of thought or talks from that. Is that Richard Buck? Levi Jones? Richard Buck, yeah, for who used to work at Penske for many years.
he was the cup director too, wasn't he, for a bit?
Yeah, and so he has ties and understands big time racing. He'll be the new Indy next director, so that'll a solid veteran person there. Kimi Antonelli withdraws from the Super Formula test, but you'll have Ollie Bierman driving there, or at least trying it. Daddy's Money goofball Devlin DeFrancesco will be racing the third Ray Hall car next year. And yeah, so that's the Indy cars. In NHRA, you have Brian Loans wrote an article on NHRA.com talking about some of the funny car news. Dickie Venables moving away from Matt Hagan's team and the Tony Stewart Racing funny car team. So no, Brian Loans is saying he might go to Coletta. Jim Head and Blake Alexander have gone their separate ways. So Blake Alexander, it sounds like, is going to join existing one car team. It could be, and could end up being the one with Bob Tasca, because he mentioned that as well. Tasca's wanting to run a second Mustang. Jim Head, who they'll get is to be determined, but their car was really running fast at the end of the year. And then who will drive John Force's car in 2025? There's youth like Jordan Vandergrift. There's Jack Beckman, of course, who ran and admirably got him to second in points. Robert Height, of course, family, and taking this year off because of health. Will he be healthy enough and want to race again? That would be interesting to see him driving his now ex-father-in-law's car. But Camry Caruso moving from KB Titan to Elite, that's possible. Phil Schuler going to TSR, yeah. Ida Zetterstrom and Tony Schumacher's teams, will she have funding? And then Mike Salinas and the amount of things they got going on with the Scrappers team. So that's all those things are mentioned in NHRA. I talked about Kevin Magnussen going to the WRT BMW effort. So that'll be basically similar to what his dad did many years ago after his Formula One career was over. Of course, we got a preview of it a couple of years ago when he drove for Ganassi and Cadillac. And that kind of opened up a door for them for Haas to go and sign him back again. Prema has signed Sebastian Montoya for 2025, so a huge opportunity for Seb to see if he can put himself in the mix, possibly for supposedly to go and get to Formula One, with Andretti in the mix for 2026. Oliver Solberg moving to Toyota for 2025 and WRC2 to try and win that championship and put himself in a place to possibly get back up to the main game. And yeah, you got Kelvin Vanderlinde set to join BMW, but who knows where he'll race. Probably would be in the GT side. Whether it's in the United States or the WEC is to be determined. Adrian Formeau moving over to Hyundai after driving for Ford. Last couple of years, concession. All five will remain the same concession classes, closer to Yamaha and Honda despite. Yeah, so having taken as well as being downgraded to low. Our techno is struggling more, so divided for results in category D. Third for Minnesota here. 740 wrapped up manufactured. Third of the seat. Category A. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. And then Pirelli was only for had it failed to reach it, it would have been relegated to D. It was only Japanese brand, yeah. So Ducati, nobody in the B, and then yeah. So all right. Riders has for free test line, frozen free. So yeah. So we'll see what Yamaha and Honda will be able to do with that additional time, testing time. Aprilia and KTM has a little more flexibility, but nowhere near as much as Yamaha and Honda. And then Ducati, of course, dominates the field. So Suzuki president shows interest in returning to MotoGP. Of course, they dropped out a few years ago out of nowhere. So we'll see if how serious they really are. Yeah, so we'll think that's about it for all of the racing news there. So we'll move on to the NFL, and Josh, I'll let you go because the Jacksonville Jaguars won a game and might have affected their draft position in the process. Taking away a little bit of possible trade capital or equity, knowing that you have Trevor Lawrence at quarterback and that there are teams that would be behind them to want to get a quarterback and probably would want to give away the farm to go and get a, Cam Ward or Shador Sanders or insert name here. But either way, the Jags played against the Tennessee Tuxedos. And, I guess what was the issue for Tennessee quarterback had shoulder issues or something. But that game was definitely dearth of offense. You had Mac Jones trying to set back the forward pass by about 50 years. As well. We're holding on for dear life for the last days of Doug Peterson's head coaching career, but somehow or another, your defense did work, and you got to win there. You're battling still. That there are teams that would have quit at this point, but the Jags showed up in a divisional matchup and got the job done on Sunday.
Yeah, they got the job done. 10-6 final score there. So yeah, great scoring overall. I like low scoring games anyways. So yeah, that was great to see. I was hoping for, a tie to happen because the Titans were up 3-0, then 6-0, and then I was just hoping, maybe the Jags, they got a field goal, and then maybe they'll get another one. Then we'll just end this game in a tie because the Jacksonville Jaguars are the only team in the NFL who have not finished in a tie game ever in their history. So it would set new NFL history if they did that. But regardless, I like low-scoring games anyways because they're a lot more rare these days to happen anyways. Mac Jones, first half was pretty bad. 2 interceptions. Second half, a little bit better, and they actually managed to win the game and relied heavily on the run game there. You mentioned Will Levis got his shoulder crunched there by Josh Allen, smacked him down with halftime at the end of halftime, or before halftime. There just went and totally took him down and Levis landed in his shoulder there, and definitely I think that affected him in the second half because he seemed like he was hurting there. So, yeah, the running game tank basically touchdown for him there, which that didn't help me much in fantasy. Calvin Ridley on third down. Yeah, Calvin Ridley, they had a 3rd down and 5. Calvin Ridley promptly caught the ball and ran out of bounds there, which I kind of want to think that he didn't have enough time to turn up the field. The ball was not really thrown that accurately, and then from Levis, and then by the time Ridley caught it, he had too much momentum and couldn't turn up field. But still, it's hilarious to see a guy like when you need 5 yards and it looks like it's a pretty easy pass to the flat, just run straight out of bounds and cost your team a down, and then eventually lose on 4th down there. So gotta love it there. But yeah, the Jags actually get a win, which that affects their draft position, but I'm not really too concerned because I don't really think there's anybody worth like tanking for personally, especially for Jacksonville. I don't think there's like one person out there that they could potentially have that's like, oh, they got to have him because there's a lot of needs there for them anyways. But I mean, I'm not really, I mean, I guess Travis Hunter, I mean, might be the most dynamic player currently, but same time, Travis Hunter is not, I mean, he's doubling between wide receiver and cornerback. He's going to have to pick one in the NFL. He's not going to be able to do both unless there's like, those special like Hail Mary plays where you have a guy come in on defense there. But I mean, I don't know what position he'd play at, but I don't know if he would help the Jags that much in terms of I mean, yes, it would help the Jags in terms of talent, but like, they need offensive linemen and defensive linemen, so they need some meat instead of skill position players there. So we'll see what they do, but they could win out. The schedule, they got the Jets, the Raiders, 2 of the worst teams in the NFL in addition to them right now, and then they finish against the Titans and the Colts. So they potentially could have 4 wins in a row to end the season, and then potentially the Titans, or the Colts, which that could be hilarious. But so there is actually a possibility that they somehow go 7-10 to end the season. So I doubt it. But then if they do go 7-10 with Mac Jones, then that might save Doug Peterson's job and everything, which I don't want that. But maybe Shad Khan will just be like, firing this guy anyways. There, despite the on paper strong finish to the year, but we'll see what happens. I mean, the Jets aren't that good either, so they might pick up a 4th win here on next Sunday there. But they won a game and affect their draft position a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. And I'm personally, and also the other fact is that no idea whether Trent Baalke will be back or not, so can't even really think about the draft because you don't know what the plan is there in terms of where they decide to go with the roster. So there's that factor as well. But in terms of that, I mean, we'll see. Should be interesting. Jags playing the throwback uniforms this week against New York, so could be a little bit of fun there. But fantasy wise, at least for me, I mean, this is the first time that I've missed the playoffs in our league that since I've joined. So I guess it was bound to happen eventually, right? But just I guess throughout the year, just I guess terrible luck with starting somebody or not starting somebody that I needed to start or should have started, and then getting blown out multiple weeks. Just having the unfortunate luck of having Jared Goff go against you when they're playing against the Jaguars. Having close losses. So I think quarterback position hurt me because I stuck with CJ Stroud the whole year, which at retrospect was probably a bad idea. But probably should have accepted the trade for Tua and Russell Wilson because the last 3 weeks they've been playing out of their minds. So that could have helped for the fantasy playoffs. But wanted to stick to my guns there, I guess, and I do believe running back lives do matter. So, the Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Brian Robinson Jr. Stack. I mean, that was basically my roster, and then struggled with wide receivers the whole year, and then defense never really had a guy that was consistent throughout. So, yeah, I mean, it's bound to happen. I mean, at least I think a couple of weeks I had the weekly high score, so I'll make back some of the down payment there. So, but I'm happy to help contribute to the wrestling belt for you, Phil. So we'll see. We'll see there on that. But the other league I'm in, my sleeper league, did make the playoffs there. Although I was in third place and I lost my last game by 8 points. So really narrow loss there. When you think about it, I had the highest scoring loss this week at 122 to 131. So went from 8-5 to 8-6. Was in third place on the seeding, and then dropped to 6th. That doesn't change where or which bracket I'm in. So I guess it doesn't hurt me there in terms of who I'm actually going up against, because I'm still going up against the same person, I think, there, or at least I'm still in the same bracket, so it doesn't affect anything. So I would have been in third place if I won and on that bracket, so it just flips the seeding there. So we'll see how that league goes. I mean, that's not for money. I mean, I guess a little bit of bragging rights there, if anything. So we'll see how that goes. I did start Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard in that one because of the Jags, and it did help. Although passing wise, Calvin Ridley didn't really put up that good of stats in terms of scoring that week, and I did pick up in that league the 49ers running back Isaac Guerrero, which questionable for this week, of course, but we'll see what happens there and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's been a interesting season in fantasy, and hopefully maybe I can get 7th in this and finish not finish last. I guess we'll see what happens, but I guess it was bound to happen to miss it, so I'm sure it's happened to you many times over the years.
Yeah, I mean, missing the playoffs in this league is brutal. I mean, to make the playoffs at this point is tough. For you to miss the playoffs for the first time shows how consistent you have been in your years in the league. So, I mean, probably is opening the door to new opportunities. It seems like a reset with your with your actual team, and a reset on the fantasy side as well, with some new quarterbacks that'll be coming in to the NFL along with who we have out there right now. 49ers for the first time in 3 weeks showed up and played a football game. They look like a professional football team. George Kittle is George Kittle. There was setting more records. The defense actually looked like they knew how to play defense. They actually knew how to tackle. They sacked the quarterback because Caleb Williams is the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. So I think that might have more to do with the fact that their offensive line sucks. But I mean, they basically baptized Chicago for like 2.5 quarters, and then took the foot off the gas, and then let them score a couple touchdowns to help for fantasy purposes for those who have Caleb Williams and some of the other ancillary guys. Keenan Allen, I started him in multiple teams, and he had 30 yards, so that really helped me out. The Niners are up against it. Seattle won. The LA's playing really well, so it'll take a minor miracle for them to make the playoffs. I'm pretty certain they won't. So they have a tough road the rest of the season anyway. Yeah, so I'm just curious as to they have to play Thursday night against the Rams at home. So in a couple of days, then they have 10 days before they play the Dolphins in Miami. They get to play the number 1 seeded Lions in a rematch of the NFC Championship game on the 30th. So they'll be playing in the span of 18 days. They'll be playing against 3 teams that are playoff contenders and the Lions, who are a definite Super Bowl contender. And then that Cardinals 49er game is a 4:15, 4:25 buried Chris Myers game waiting to happen in week 18. But yeah, it's crazy to me they beat the Buccaneers, and they lost that game against the Seahawks. Yeah. You look at how many of these games have been close. They were within a touchdown of the Vikings, who have 10 wins. They lost by 3 to the Rams. They lost by 1 to the Cardinals. They did beat the Seahawks earlier in the season, so that's their only win. They won in Seattle, but then lost to Seattle a few weeks ago. They've been in a lot of these games. The Chiefs game was not as close as it looks there, but the games, again, after that loss to Seattle, the performances they put up against the Packers and the Bills were the death knell for their season. But George Kittle showed up. Some of these other guys showed up. That's all I can say about that. In terms of fantasy, I have the number 1 seed in my league for the first time in a while. I did not get the highest points, though. Interestingly enough, I finished. I finished 3rd in that. Wilson ended up. He's 7th or 6th. He was the last team to make the playoff, and he ends up with the high points for the regular season, so he'll get some cash that way. Joe was 2nd in that, has not used 1 penny of waiver budget, but has only made 13 moves, which is the least amount of anybody. Jeff and Josh were next with 14 moves. As a comparison, I had 60 because I have a problem. But then that's just how I do things, and I have done things for God knows how long I've played fantasy. So riding the hot hand for a good part of the season of Lamar Jackson, and then having Baker Mayfield, or making the move for Baker Mayfield, and him being the Heisman Trophy kind of Baker Mayfield instead of what his Cleveland days were. Being able to pick up Chuba Hubbard and make that trade. They made that trade for Chase Brown. I had J.K. Dobbins, which was a big pickup, but then he got hurt. Some of these other free agent pickups have been pretty solid and have helped me out greatly. So, the team that you bring into the season, Lamar Jackson, Justin Jefferson, Pacheco got hurt early in the year, but, he was a part of that foundation. You don't usually take the team that you started with all the way to the end. So we'll see what happens. have a week off here in week 15, but trying to get ready for week 16 to see what will happen with that. In the team I won with last year, in that league, I got screwed. I definitely got screwed. Last week of the regular season, get destroyed by a team that is not even in contention. And then every other team that I kind of was in the mix with all seemed to have great weeks. Drop all the way now to the 4 seed or 5th seed. So now if I want to win or retain the title, I'll have to beat a team that I've had struggles with over the years and then beat the best team in the league this whole year. So that's a brutal draw. And then I would have to, if I were to somehow or another fade that, those two, then we'll see what happens. But and then in the third league, like I was saying, I'm probably gonna protest and drop everybody because, I mean, the reality of the world is I was not able to even draft the team. The commissioner person went and decided to change the draft time, and I was getting ready to log in to do the draft, only to find out that the draft had already taken place. So that's bullshit. The fact that I was able to win or get myself into the mix, even with that situation, even with the bullshit that ended up taking place in that league, I'll go and I'll take what I got there and just move on and look for another league in 2025. Maybe make a second league. Who knows? I was talking about it or thinking about it with Vic and Wilson, but of course they both have kids, a lot of kids. Wilson has 3 and Vic has 1. So I mean, they're busier that way. But I know that Wilson seems to have plenty of time to play fantasy football. So I think based on that and that alone, I think he could help in terms of being a commissioner of or a co-commissioner of a league. But we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and then and then in our sleeper league, we're the number 1 seed in that. We won that. Wilson ended up losing that in the last week with his loss. So, so that is, so that sucks for him, but it's good for us. So we get a bye into the second round, and then we'll play the 4-5 matchup. Wilson will have to beat Luke to then get a matchup against the number 2 seed, and then there's a possibility of us playing each other if we can both get through that. If Wilson can win 2 games and we can win 1, we'll play for the championship. It's the first time we've actually made the playoffs in that dynasty league, so it's nice to actually get to the playoffs. It's been a brutal run, honestly, in that league, so we'll take it though. Okay, so F2 and F1 Academy, let's get into that. Formula 2 ran their season finale at Abu Dhabi, and we get, so we'll get the Calendar Formula 2, Gabriel Bortoleto, Formula 2 champion. Yeah, so he won F3 in 23, F2 in 24, and now he'll be going to Formula 1 in 2025. Pepe Marti was the sprint race winner at Yas Marina and Abu Dhabi, and then the sprint race there. So Pepe Marti, Gabriel Bortoleto, Dino Beganovic finishes third. Ollie Bierman, Isaac Hadjar, your top five. Jack Crawford was eighth. Got Max Easterston was 14th. Kushmini 17th. Then in the feature race, Josh Dirksen gets the win over Gabriel Bortoleto, Richard Vachor, Victor Martins, Ollie Bierman. Top five: Pepe Marti, Beganovic, Cordial, Gothan, Ryomo Miata. Kushmini was 12th. Easterson 17th there. So the final results, Bortoleto the champion, Hadjar second, Paul Aaron third, Zane Maloney fourth, and Jack Crawford fifth in points. Andrea Kimi Antonelli was sixth. Martins, Vachor, Franco Colapinto, and then Dirksen rounded out the top 10, point and a half ahead of Dennis Hauger. And there's driver announcements and stuff going on for F2 with the high tech. Dino Beganovic. So you have that. So and then F1 Academy had the same going on after running 3 rounds. Carrie, she ain't bad. Carrie Schreiner. But she isn't very good, but whatever, she's good looking. The results, so in the final round, Abby Pulling won the first 2 races, and Maya Woog, the Ferrari representative, won race 3. The final standings, of course, saw Abby Pulling win the championship. Dorian Pan was second. Woog was third. Nerea Marti was fourth. Hamda Al-Kabasi fifth. Chloe Chambers, the American, was sixth. One of 2 Americans, Leah Block, was eighth. So for her first year in single-seater racing, Leah Block was eighth there. There were only a couple of drivers who didn't score points, but they only ran 1 race weekend. So Courtney Cronin, Jufali there. So that's Formula 1 Academy there for 2024. Sao Paulo E-Prix saw trying to go to, so we'll get that. So Mitch Evans getting the win over Antonio Felix da Costa and Taylor Barnard. So Jaguar over Porsche, and then McLaren, Nissan. McLaren finished 3rd and 4th. Eduardo Mortara and Nick DeVries for Mahindra finished 5th and 6th. Sebastian Buemi, Dick Tantrum, Jean-Eric Verne, and Stoffel Van Dorn round out your top 10 points finishes. And And so that was the in first race. Pascal Wehrlein did not finish, the defending series champion, but it's only the first round of the championship. Plenty of racing to go, so we will see how that season unfolds. Next round will be in Mexico City in early January. And then the Snowball Derby, which is last but not least, was Caden Honeycutt going and beating Ty Majeski, the defending race winner, and Stephen Nasse for the win there. Honeycutt over Nasse, Majeski, Jace Hansen, William Sawalich. Rounding out the top 5, Gio Ruggiero, Sammy Smith, Chandler Smith, Matthew Craig, and Dawson Sutton rounded out the top 10. Luke Fenhouse was 11th. Bubba Pollard 14th. Carson Quapple 15th. Jake Finch 17th. Brent Cruz 18th. Noah Gagson, who got spun, was 19th. Cole Butcher 20th. Derek Thorne 24th. David Gilliland 26th. Trayden Lapsevich 28th. Jake Garcia 30th. Caden Quapple 31st. Connor Jones, who everyone wants to kill, it seems, 32nd. Caden Lapsevich, former CASCAR champion, along with his brother. I don't know. Yeah, he finished 35th. So, I mean, credit to Caden Honeycutt, who's going to be Truck Series driver next year, and gets one of the biggest wins, biggest win of his career. So, I mean, to beat Nasse, to beat Ty Majeski, the defending race winner and the Truck Series champion, no less. I mean, that's a pretty badass thing to do. So, cool to see that, and great to see a young driver go and get that victory. I mean, there are a bunch of young drivers, but I'm saying, like, for somebody who's not as well known, and they sit there and talk about him regularly. So, Caden Honeycutt going and getting that job done is huge for him and his career. We will move on to the sim segment. Josh, let us know what's going on in iRacing and gaming.
Yeah, of course. This week iRacing 2025 Season 1 is here. They just released the update, so gonna have to update this to get, up to date for 2025 Season 1, but Acura NSX GT3 Evo 22, so 3 seasons in IMSA, and Petit Le Mans now on iRacing, BMW M2 CSR, and that's base content for all users free. For the Ferrari 499p prototype going to be available, and the new prototype series for iRacing. Hussett Speedway World of Outlaws track from South Dakota, Thruxton Circuit, New Hampshire Motor Speedway upgrade, Demo Drive, I guess, is a new way to turn solo laps with any content you already own and been rebuilt from the ground up and integrated directly into the iRacing UI moving forward. Debris Refresh, which is, I guess, they're generating a new way to generate debris and have more realistic impacts for racing, for gravel and mud. I saw a video, I guess they're implementing, it looks like marbles are going to be a huge factor now in sim or at least on iRacing, because it seems like those marbles never really existed before, but I guess, when you get up high, especially like on a short track where, marbles are a big deal, you got things that could help or take away from grip. So that might be interesting to see how that runs there. Improvements to netcode to help, with lag, improve anyone facing any excess lag, but everyone in the session. Improved lighting system, improved the spotter effects for damage. Improved, Formula V is rain racing enabled now. More AI racing also, and for setups, more setups are available now. So yeah, a lot of updates here for 2025 season 1. A lot of new content here, of course. So yeah, looking forward to getting on that and trying all those updates out. Oh yeah, and also the Supercars Gen 3 Camaro and Ford Mustang also available now on iRacing. So definitely a big update here for 2025 season 1, and the Sim continuing to add more content and also continuing to improve the product. So yeah, that's good there. Also, I guess another sim racing news. I guess Gran Turismo 7 is on sale on PlayStation, which I just saw there. So might as well mention that if you're on that platform. I think World of Outlaws, the iRacing developed game, is also on sale there. So a couple good games to pick up here as we wind down the year. I think Gran Turismo is $19.95, and the World of Outlaws is like $32 right now. So normally $70. So it's a good discount there on PlayStation. So pick that up if you're on that platform. But yeah, looking forward to seeing the rest of these updates on iRacing and seeing all that. But might have to stream a little bit there. Of course, streams as always. Twitch TV/usailor2, and go on there and watch all the streams. And of course, the Twitter account at JPHuffline. Go on there and follow me and see all the takes about the racing and all the football. Be all on there. And then of course, our page at Gripship Podcast on YouTube. We have all our videos and everything. You can go on there and see everything we've got, and go on there and subscribe to our content. So yeah, of course, got one more here in the week for us, or in the year for us, and of course Christmas time and all that. So glad to see the F1 season come to an end finally. But a lot of different storylines playing throughout the year, and looking forward to seeing the I guess next year in all of racing, and which isn't all that far away. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But so of course, yeah, glad to be on here and be able to discuss and talk about it.
Absolutely, man. And we'll start going and talking about 2024 and racing in more detail next week with the NASCAR Cup Series season review. We'll also do more NFL discussions in terms of Week 15 playoffs, in terms of what we did in the fantasy side. Also previewing those teams, at least on the two that are on bye, see what they can do. You can find me at PG Matthew 28 on X. Trying to go and haven't spent as much time there, of course. But yeah, PG Matthew 28 on X, Grip Strip Pod as well on there. For Blue Sky, you can find me at PGMGSP 28 on Instagram. You can also find me at PGMGSP 28. You can find the Grip Strip Pod at philipgmatthew.com. And thank you for listening to the Gripster Podcast. We'll be back next week for episode 250. Crazy to think. 250 episodes. Man. Who would have thought when we started this deal in COVID time, get to 250 episodes? That's pretty crazy. But we'll do that next week, and then we'll figure out when we'll do the next one. Won't be too long between shows, but between work and other things, we never know. So for that, thanks as always for listening, subscribing, and we'll see you next time for episode 250 of the Gripster Podcast. But until then, goodbye.